Sup? This is Greggatron. How's everybody doing? I hope you like my shirt. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln as a robot. Alright, so this is crazy. This story I'm about to talk about. This is so insane. I wasn't going to talk about this for two reasons. One, everybody else is already talking about it. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about a story everybody else is already talking about. That's not even my style. Well, the more I listen about it, I'll be listening to a video and I'm like talking out loud to the people talking about the article. So you got that. And it's just so jacked up. But the second reason I don't like talking about these types of stories is because they're freaking depressing. They're bad news. They're awful. They're sad. And nobody really wants to hear this type of stuff. Well, then I was like, well, I do want to talk about it now because I used to run track. Alright, so you've seen the title of the video. I guess in Texas, there was a track meet, a high school track meet, and there was an altercation between two kids, give or take. One of the kids, his name was Carmelo. Carmelo Anthony, like the basketball player's name. That's why I can remember that. Well, so this kid, Carmelo, was in the wrong section of the track meet. And he was actually in the meet. I'll talk about that later. When you're in a track meet, your teams are supposed to kind of sit with each other. So everybody knows who is who. You got your jerseys on, obviously, but you're supposed to stay with your team. Especially if it's a relay race, but that's beyond the point. Stay with your team. When I first heard this story, I thought it took place in the bleachers, but no, they were like actually underneath the tents. So this kid, Carmelo, he was sitting in the opponent's teams or behind the tents of his opponents. Well, then these other kids are like, who are you? And then they're like, well, you're not supposed to be over here. This is our section. This is our spot. One thing led to another. And the kid who was telling him this stuff, his name was Austin, I believe. They said Austin pushed Carmelo. And Carmelo stabbed this kid in the heart with a knife. I'm having trouble even saying this stuff because it's so crazy. I can't even process this. We're talking about two high school kids fighting at a track meet. And one of them gets stabbed to death. And my first response to this was, who the brings a knife to a track meet? You really are not safe anywhere. You don't bring a knife to a track meet. Also, when I first heard this story, I thought the Carmelo kid, I thought he was like in the audience or something. Or he was, a fan of his school team or a family member or something. No, he was actually in the race. So I'm like, wait a minute. If you're on the team, you're supposed to be like a role model to all the other kids in the school. Whether that be football, soccer, basketball, hockey, track. You name it, tennis, golf. And even when I was in high school, and that's one reason why I'm talking about this, because I used to run track. But when I was in high school, the football players and the cheerleaders, those kids were like the elites. They were like role models. And a lot of people wanted to do sports because that was like one of the perks. You were on a different level from everybody else. That, and it looks good on your resume, and it's fun. But I was thinking too, when I was in school, I never even thought about anybody getting stabbed at a track meet. And that's one of the things the article said in the news was like, I think the father said it and somebody else had said, you know, how did the knife get in there? Why was security so lax? You don't need freaking security at a freaking track meet. Like, that's what rubs me the wrong way about all this. They're talking about security. How did this happen, they said. I'm like, you don't need security at a track meet because you're not supposed to have security at a track meet because people don't do this stuff. People don't get stabbed at track meets. That's not what happens. Whereas, apparently, this stuff does happen at track meets. Therefore, we do need security. So I'm like, what kind of world are we living in when we need security at track meets? You don't keep metal detectors at track meets. I mean, what world are we living in? This is the most bizarre, crazy. Everybody goes to track meets. And when I did go as a kid, even in middle school, I never felt like I was in danger. Not that I walked around feeling like, wow, I feel so safe here. I didn't feel safe, but I didn't feel in danger either. I just felt like I was at a fun event where I get to go out there and do my best. I wasn't thinking about, oh, is something bad going to happen tonight? Like, what? What? Now, did people get hurt? Absolutely. You're going to get injured. It's sports. I got hurt. Now, whenever there's an event, football, wrestling, track, you name it, basketball, there's always going to be an athletic trainer, right? You know, the person who patches you up when you hurt yourself. They give you some ice. They make sure you're all stretched out, you know. And I think at the football games, they had an ambulance on standby. And maybe track meets too, maybe. Don't quote me on that. My point is, yes, kids get hurt at these events, but they're supposed to get hurt, quote unquote, to some degree because they're doing physical activities. But never did I think, oh, someone's going to get killed out here. Like, no, you might sprain your ankle. You might pull this muscle. You might pull that. You might rip up some cartilage. That's what I did. I tore my meniscus. But I never thought like, hey, maybe my teammate over there is going to get stabbed today. Like that's so beyond my comprehension. That's why it's hard for me to talk about this. Not because it's quote unquote emotional. It's because I can't understand it. My brain can't process it. And the father said he already forgives this kid for doing this. He said, God's going to deal with me. God's going to deal with my family. God's going to deal with the person who did this. So shout out to the father. But the kid who was killed. I believe his name was Austin. He had a twin brother who was holding him, and he died in his twin brother's arms. I'm like, this is just nuts. Like, track meets are supposed to be fun. You go out there, you show your skills, you do your best, you hype up the crowd, you've been practicing for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and months. And what I loved about track was you're not racing against other people. You're racing against yourself. You're trying to beat your own time. I mean, the relay races were always the best. I loved running track. And I wasn't like the fastest runner ever, but I was solid. I was in the relay race. I did the open 4. I did the 4x2. And I did the 4x4. Yeah, that's beyond the point. This video is not about me. I'm just saying, it's sad when you know you really can't go anywhere. I remember when the movie theater got shot up in Colorado, the Batman movie, right? And me and my 2 brothers, we actually went to that movie that night, but we live in Illinois. So we heard about that crap the next morning. We're like, what? We went to see that movie last night. What? This is in 2011. You got people shooting at concerts now, churches, etc., etc. The list goes on. And now this. So you can't go to a concert. You can't go to a church. You can't go to a parade. You can't go to the movie theater. And now you can't go to a track meet. It's like, and I was talking to my coworker a couple of days ago. We were talking about how we don't go out anymore. We just, basically we go to work and we go straight home, it seems. And he's in his 40s. Yeah. He's in his 40s. I'm in my 30s. But we were just saying, you know, we go to work, go home. And he's a family man on top of that, but you can't go to the club. You can't go to the bars. You can't even go to the party half the time. But let me talk about this knife thing. You brought a knife. First of all, you know how you're not supposed to judge your fellow man? I'm judging like a mug in this video. So the knife was in the backpack of this Carmelo kid. So that means you were planning on potentially using that knife. So this kid was looking for trouble. Because after the other kids told him, hey, you're not supposed to be here, get out of here. I guess the Carmelo kid said, touch me and see what happens. And his hand allegedly was already in the bag. So he got pushed, and as soon as he got pushed, he pulled the knife out and stabbed the other kid. So it's like, you wanted this to happen, my guy. You were in the wrong section talking stuff. And then you said, I dare you to touch me. I dare you. And then you stabbed this kid in the chest. Like, where do you get off? I don't get it, man. I just don't get it. You had intent to use that knife. The whole self-defense argument is BS. And in his defense, they're going to say, well, there was multiple kids on the other team. He felt in danger. You shouldn't have freaking been over there, dude. You had no bit. And I could see if, like, the other team was full of his fellow homies. They just ended up going to a different high school, but they all kind of knew each other. And we used to do that too. We would see, for us, our track meet was at the football field, but there was bleachers on both sides. So we would kind of intermingle, and we weren't even supposed to do that, I remember, because they didn't want this stupid stuff to happen. But a lot of us, we went to the same middle school together and or elementary school. So we would all kind of hang out when it wasn't our time to race. But if you weren't on the teams, if you were just in the audience, in many cases, kids would still sit in different areas to hang out. But usually they weren't causing trouble. You did have some once in a blue moon. My point is, in his defense, they're going to say, well, he felt like he was in danger. If you feel like you're in danger, why the F are you over there? Like, I never thought when I was running track, someone's going to get killed tonight. And I do remember one time, there was like a little altercation, but it was outside the meet. It was like when people were going home, and it was in the parking lot. And I was still in the bleachers. I didn't see what happened. I was still in the bleachers, but it only lasted for like 5 or 10 seconds. The cops saw what was going on, and they scattered. That's just bullshit high school rivalries. You don't freaking stab people, though. Like, what is this? What is this? So now this father is without one of his sons, and this twin brother is without his twin brother. And don't get me on the whole race thing. Don't even get me started. Because the people who are complaining about how this story's getting covered, they're saying, oh, you guys are racist. Because the kid who got stabbed was white. First of all, this ain't got nothing to do with race. But just be honest. Like, didn't Malcolm X say, I'm for the truth, no matter who's saying it? Like, who cares that this kid was black and he stabbed this white kid? Just look at what happened and see that it's jacked up. But we all know if it was the other way around, they cry white supremacy. We know this. But the media isn't going to talk about this story. That's the problem. Because the bad guy was black. And when they cover these types of stories, they get backlash and say, oh, you're just making black people look bad. No, you're making yourself look bad. You stabbed a freaking kid with a knife in the chest at a freaking track meet. This is why people are afraid of us. By us, I mean black people. I know people don't identify me as black. Both blacks and whites say I'm not black, right? But this is why people fear black people. For crap like this. Because we just blow up on people. We just explode. Over nothing. And let me say this. Black people have this hive mind mindset to where we'll actually support a fellow black simply because that person's black, not even knowing all the facts. So something like this will happen. It could be the worst of the worst type of thing will happen. And you can take 10 black people and 9 of them will say, well, you know, what caused it? Maybe he was poor. Maybe he was hungry. Maybe he just wanted a job. Maybe he didn't have opportunity. Maybe society turned its back on him. We'll make up all these excuses and just, instead of saying, you know what, throw that man in jail. hang that. No, I ain't gonna say that. Hang him now. I got the rope right here. Whereas white people, when fellow whites do crime, they're like, no, hang him. Throw him under the jail. Throw him under the bus. White people will leave tire marks all up and down fellow white people. But black people, we won't even snitch on a fellow black if we've seen the event happen in front of our own eyes. We won't even snitch. That's the difference. So we need to get out of this hive mindset, man. This matrix of culture. Like, we all know it's wrong. We know right from wrong regardless of how you're raised. Something inside of you knows you shouldn't rob a bank. You shouldn't shoot people. You shouldn't stab people. You shouldn't do these things. But I noticed if the bad guy is black, a lot of black people will side with that person regardless. I'm like, why would you side with somebody who's making your own community a dumpster fire? I just don't get it, man. The culture needs to stop. Like, there needs to be like a movement, like an anti-culture movement. The whole black culture thing, man, it's dead. Like, it's done. Like, you could say it was cool in the 90s with the music. You have the 70s, the afros. Everything from 1965 till now, it's just destroyed. It really is. So when people are afraid of me in public, because I'm 6'1.5" and I'm 220 pounds. When people are afraid of me in public, I used to get ticked off at that. But when I see stories like this, I totally understand why. I get it. I used to get ticked. Like, why are these people looking at me like this? I used to say, well, you know, white people do crime too, which they do. But you got to look at that per capita, man. And the crimes we do are different. I was talking to a lady at work about this weeks ago. We were talking about crime and different things and police. And she was saying, you know, well, white people do the same stuff we do. I'm like, not per capita. Not at all. She didn't get the whole per capita thing. And I'm going into what we do. I was like, well, white people, they do arson. White people do white collar crime. White people do embezzlement. Things of this nature. Black people, we shoot the block up. You know, and you can say what you want about mass shooters. A mass shooter is someone who, you know, shoots 3 or more people at one time. Black people do that too. So everything these pro-black clowns say the white man does, you're really doing it yourself. It's called projection. I'm just sick of this mess. I really am. And what happens in the future, man? Like, are we just gonna have metal detectors everywhere in the mall, in the gym, in the grocery store? Are we just gonna live in a world where everywhere you go, the bank, the church, the concert, the airport. Well, they're already in the airport. The dealership to get your oil changed. Will there just be metal detectors everywhere because society is going to be so far gone. We're going to live in a world of metal detectors. And even if there were metal detectors at that track meet, a lot of those detectors are junk. Like, you can still find a way to slip a knife or something else in there. Or you could just get a wooden knife. Like, this ain't about the knife. This is about violent people being violent for no reason. You're at the event to run. You weren't a fan. You weren't in the stands. You're one of the players. You're there to have fun, because that's what track is. It's fun. But instead, you turn around and... I'm done talking about this. I'm done talking about it. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.